Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 133 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. And today, Kris and I are excited. Well, number one, we're talking to another Kris. Well, spelled the same way. But we're also excited because this is another installment of our Amazon Seller Journey series. And on with us is Kris McCauley. How you doing, Kris?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you. We're talking a little bit about, beforehand. You do a lot more in the wholesale, and so we always love talking to people in this because it's something that Kris and I would love to get more involved in. But we just want to hear your story. I mean, you're all over YouTube. You've got great videos out there. You're putting out good content. So we just, for anybody who hasn't heard you or met you or seen you on YouTube, let's dive right into your story. If we can start at the beginning, we'd love it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for asking. And I have been selling on Amazon now for a little over 4 years. I've been selling on eBay since like 2011. And I was working a corporate job. Like that's what I went to school for, was like accounting, finance. And I was running an eBay business. I was starting to make enough money to where I'm like, all right, I think I can do this full time. I left my job and I was moving across country. So I'm like, well, I can do this anywhere. Let me just move across the country. And on my way across the country, I found some private label course. And that's how I started, was private labeling. And that was back in 2017. Didn't really go as, I didn't lose money, but I didn't really make any money either. And in the meantime, like, you know, I quit my job, so I need a way to basically, it takes money to make money. So I'm like, how can I get some money quick? Well, what I used to do was like went to garage sales. So I started selling on eBay again, and then I started doing that with selling on Amazon, which I don't recommend because you're not going to have receipts for any of your items. I think it's extremely risky. I did it. I didn't know that. So I started going to book sales and doing garage sale arbitrage. And so that's what I did in 2017. And it got to the point where I'm like, okay, this is kind of hard to scale or harder to scale. So then I moved into online arbitrage end of 2017. I came across a guy, and I actually have the video on my channel, but I came across a guy named Brock Johnson, which if you guys aren't familiar with him, he made like, I don't know, $7 million selling solar eclipse glasses.
Yep.
And yeah, so I'm like, oh, but there was in 2016, he made a bunch of money doing online arbitrage. Like I'm talking like, I think he made like $30,000 or $40,000. And so I saw him in a Facebook group, and I'm like, immediately, I'm like, what do I need to do to make this? Like, I want to talk with you. I want to know everything you know. And I was already kind of using tactical arbitrage at the time. And then that really was how I got into online arbitrage, which I did for the next year and a half, was online arbitrage. And then I migrated into wholesale about latter part of 2018, and pretty much have been doing that ever since. So here's my cat. And yeah, so pretty much just do wholesale full time and growing that business. Yep.
I've got so many questions.
Yeah. Well, it's unique because
yes,
most of the time you do like the whole retail arbitrage. I'm going to scan a few things, go to Target, Walmart. That's how you got to keep your feet wet. You did the opposite. You went straight private label, got in there, found a product. Now, I always like, do you have the product still? Do you still sell it anymore? Or?
No. Yeah. That's private label. I want to get back into private label, but it's just right now, it's just so much with wholesale going on. So
yeah, that's crazy. But it's opposite. Like Dustin and I, we talked about earlier, like normally you just kind of get your feet wet, do the whole retail, and then you kind of go online, and then you try to look into wholesale, and then you look into private label. This is like completely opposite direction. I think it's unique.
Yeah, I guess so.
So let's just talk about that. First of all, that private label, because it's interesting. I mean, Kris and I talk about this all the time. We've had our massive flops and massive successes in terms of private label products. I mean, there's always reasons why things don't work. But you came into it, you had some e-commerce experience. You say you've been doing it since 2010, at least, like eBay and stuff like that. So when you started private labeling, what were like some of the challenges? What made that not the avenue that you decided to keep going down?
I think I just didn't have. I don't know. I mean, it was just like I was doing. It's not like I have tons of friends that do private label. It's just I think for me at the time, I just needed some money going because like the thing about private label is like that capital is tied up, right? Like you have to launch the product. You have to like wait for it to get here from China, which sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's not. And the thing is with me is I needed money now. Like I got to pay my rent. Like I'm self-employed now. I don't have that job, which is why I always still tell to this day, I'm like, don't do what I did. Like, make sure you build up that income. A lot of times you don't cut yourself a salary for a year or 2 years for small businesses. So I think for me, I just saw some success doing arbitrage. So I kind of leaned more into that and then went the wholesale route as opposed to private label. I feel like wholesale is closer to an arbitrage than it is. It's like arbitrage's bigger cousin or something as opposed to private label where it's like, you're starting this product or brand from scratch. So
it's like arbitrage in bulk, basically.
yeah,
I mean, if you can wholesale.
exactly.
Well, the mindset's very different between the two. I mean, in wholesale, you're literally talking numbers. Does it work or does it not work? For the most part.
Yeah.
I'd love to give one. In the private label, there's a lot more that goes on. I mean, you got to become a marketer. You got to become, your graphics designer, a brand.
Yeah.
And so I think for different, I mean, and honestly, I'm want to get more into wholesale myself just because I like that concept of just finding where the numbers work. If they work, you go with it. If they don't work, you don't go. Let's touch on we skipped a step though. You did online arbitrage for a while, which is interesting for anybody who's listening who doesn't know what online arbitrage is or what that means. Just quickly give them a little overview of what you were doing.
You're just buying from other online retailers to sell on Amazon for a profit. You're going to Walmart.com, Walmart, Target. And the reason why it's online arbitrage and not retail arbitrage is because you're doing it all online. So like from your laptop using softwares, a plethora of softwares, which because you are doing it online and there are those softwares there, usually the ROI is a little bit lower than that of going into the actual retail store.
Yeah, it's just a volume game. Like more you sell, more you profit, and there's no emotion tied to it. It's just like this widget sells, I'll take it for this, sell it here, and just keep going with it. So that's probably part of the game is you don't get emotionally attached to like you do in private label, like Dustin and I would probably do. You're not creating a brand. You're just like, I don't care what it is, I'm going to sell it for make some ROI back.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely a different mindset for sure.
Were you creating the listings on Amazon and then only purchasing the products if the order was made, or were you actually buying the products ahead of time and then reselling them on Amazon?
Drop shipping. I've never done drop shipping. I don't like it. I will never do it. I will never promote it. I do not like drop shipping.
Yeah.
Now, are there people successful out there doing it? Absolutely. But even still to this day, like wholesale, we still do our orders in bulk. We own all of the products. It's not where we're just shipping it if someone buys that individual item.
Okay, so I've tried wholesale, and I've always come up to this cross in the road where I've got brand and I've got like a distributor, but they always say, I need your warehouse location. And I don't have a warehouse. Like I have, it's like my residential place. And so I try to use that address as my warehouse, and it always gets denied. Like that's where I always get stopped at is you don't have a warehouse or a physical storefront for us to sell you the product to. What's your workaround there? Get a warehouse?
Well, we actually had a warehouse we had our own warehouse from April 2020 to just last month. But I don't know, and we did this before Scott. I don't know if you guys know who Scott Needham, the owner
sure
of
do.
Boxers. Yeah, so like we did this a couple months before his podcast episode came out, but I highly recommend check it out, where he talks about basically like using 3PL. So I'll say this, it's two answers to your question. One is, why not just use a third party warehouse address. And if you want to get really savvy with it, make it one of the ones that doesn't have FBA in the name. Like if it's like FBA are us, like, yeah, like, but like, and I'm not telling people to not tell your suppliers you sell on Amazon, but it's one thing going into it where it's like, hey, I'm an Amazon seller versus like, hey, like, and then let them dig on their own. And then, but the second part of your question is like, we have all of our suppliers right now. None of them care if we sell on Amazon. None of them. Now, I think it's because we're moving much, much larger volumes. And I think money does play into that when you have more capital. But let's say you got 5 to 10K and you're just trying to get in where you can fit in. That tactic I just mentioned, I think will help you kind of build up some momentum.
I'm fascinated by this wholesale model. So right now, are you focused on a certain niche, or do you not care about the product at all? What it is, as long as it works. And so like, how does that go into you finding the right products and distributors to work with?
Yeah. So, we do hone in. So like, I like to use Inventory Lab and I love reports. Like I've been a statistic junkie since I remember when I was like a kid reading baseball and weather sections just for the numbers. Like I love numbers. And one of the things I like to do in Inventory Lab, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with or not, but you can like analyze SKU, you can analyze supplier breakdown. So like your supplier and category. So you can see your most profitable categories. So we've been selling on Amazon Wholesale now for about 3 years. So we know like I just tweaked our supplier research this last weekend, and especially going into Q4. And, there's definitely 3 to 4 categories when we have our VAs reach out to suppliers in those 3 to 4 categories that we've seen some great success with.
Let's break it down. Let's say I sell retail arbitrage. I'm just getting started with Amazon. I'm just getting my feet wet, or I do private label and I want to add another revenue stream to this. How do you get started with wholesale? Like what do you do? What's like step one getting started with wholesale? What do I need to do?
I mean, first, before you reach out to any suppliers or do any supplier research, just make sure you have a professional Amazon account. Make sure that you have a third-party warehouse available. Like make sure you have one that you're going to ship to. It's not hard to find them. They're everywhere. Make sure that you have your reseller certificate and anything like that. Some states don't have a reseller cert, so do your homework and make sure that that's it. I would try and have your business set up as an LLC. You can use a site like inkfile.com and set up an LLC in pretty much any state for less than a couple $100. Once you do all that, I mean, all that stuff can be done in a week. Then you can start reaching out to suppliers.
You don't have to give away the source, but how do you find suppliers? I'm sure Google is your friend here.
Google.
But yeah. Okay.
That's it, man. Google. It's not, it just comes down to, it's it's like, that's it. But it's just like any business, right? Like, I don't know if anyone's ever had a sales job where you're like, I used to sell radio ads. This was like between my accounting time, and like, it's the same thing. Like you got to reach out to leads. You got to keep track of those leads. You got to make sure you're doing proper follow sequences. I mean, that's pretty much it. Analyze the data. Where have you seen some success at? Play with your email templates, right? If you are going the email route, I love doing email route. Set aside a day just for calling. Like if you've had a sales job before, it's going to help you out so much in this arena.
Okay, I got a list of suppliers. You just mentioned email sequences, cold calling. Not cold. Well, I guess it is cold calling.
Sometimes.
Calling. What? I got a list of suppliers. What do I need to do now?
You have a list of suppliers. I would try and reach out via email. I would reach out via email. I tell people you need to send 25 to 35 emails a day, Monday through Friday. And that'll net you like anywhere from 1 to 4 suppliers a month if you do it like that. Good ones that actually have profitable products that want to work with you.
Okay, so the supplier's like, all right, great. We'll have you come in. You fill out this form. I'm sure they got a resale form. You probably have a credit app you have to fill out, I'm sure, as well. They want to run your location. They've given you the green light. They send you a product list. Now it's just go through all the products and match up profit and margin and just see where you can make most of your ROI back. Going through the data, is that correct?
Yep. And there's like softwares that'll do it for you. I like AMZ Analyzer, Scan Unlimited. You throw it in there, it spits it back based on your criteria, greater than $5 gross profit, less than, greater than 20% ROI, whatever your criteria are. And then you then have to check those individual ASINs, make sure there aren't any mismatches, check the Keepas, make sure like Keepas is a sales velocity tracker. One of the most important tools, I think, with anyone selling on Amazon. And then, and the cool thing is like, we've named all these steps, but you can outsource all this for like $500 to $1,000 a month. Like if you do have if you already have an established job or something like that, I personally wouldn't really be doing any of this.
So if you've got the capital, go to a site like Upwork, hire a VA or onlinejobs.ph, hire a couple of VAs and just say, hey, I'm trying to do wholesale on Amazon. I'll pay you $4 or $5 an hour. Let them figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, there's two routes. You can go that route and then hope that I have a friend and he kind of went that route. Like he didn't really, he had VAs. I have a training program. They went through my training program and because he runs a couple of other businesses and he's actually finding some great success that way. I still try and advocate where it's like, know the processes yourself and then you can instruct, tweak, teach a little better. But yeah, you can go that route for sure. And find someone like that.
So you order the item, it goes directly to the 3PL.
Or sometimes directly into Amazon, depending on the relationship you have with that supplier. Yeah.
Gotcha. So if your supplier's familiar with doing Amazon FBA, he's like, here's the labels, send it directly to Amazon. It skips the 3PL.
Yep. Yeah. Always try and skip the 3PL. Like it's just going to save extra time and money. So yeah, just try and skip it. But yeah, then it'll go to the 3PL if they don't do that process for you.
Item sells and it's just rinse and repeat. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, it's not. We don't really deal with a lot of replens, like actually items. I would say maybe 20% of our entire catalog, if that is even replenishable. It's more so finding suppliers that have good products, because we're dealing right now with a lot of, especially with the supply chain issues, we're dealing more so with hard to get items. Like we're not doing liquidation or anything like that, but it's a lot of these items where it's like, all right, we just spent, 47K on some like PlayStation lights or something. So it's like, we know that that's going to be a hard to get item. Lego, we just had a huge Lego shipment. Lego is, only keeps their items around for 600 days before they stop all manufacturing, give or take some on that. So it's like, yeah. So it's just these like small things you kind of just pick up from being around. And so that's kind of how we go. So we deal with suppliers that focus more on that.
And I'm imagining Lego is not an easy get for a brand. Like that take you a little bit to get Lego as a offering, or is that?
Yeah. I mean, no, I mean, you could still get lucky. I mean, I was talking to one of my students, and he has like 10 listings on Amazon, and one of them are Lego, and I don't know how he did it, but good for him. So it took us a minute though. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
What about, so when you make these orders, are there typically like minimum orders that you can make, or is that just something that's negotiated with each supplier? Because the thought that crosses my mind is if you're shipping these into FBA, and now we have all these like different inventory restrictions and different things that I don't know how that plays out so much with wholesale sellers as well. So how does that work? Can you order just any quantity you want, or are there set quantities that you have to order at a time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just varies from supplier to supplier. So it's just sometimes it's a dollar amount, sometimes it's a case amount, sometimes it's quantity. And they usually sometimes, and this will be different for each item from each supplier. Is this a take all? So I've seen some where it's like you have to take a semi full. It's so different. And some are really like, and I don't mean to, for any of your listeners who aren't familiar with this, it's not like it takes a large amount usually. Like there's some suppliers who it's like minimum order is $500, or something like that. So there are a lot of smaller orders you can get away with out there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's always been something since I haven't dabbled in it that much. Is coming from the private label side, that's another a tough part about selling private label is you're working with a factory and you have to order a lot. There's a large minimum order quantity that could be thousands of units. So it can put you, if you're just starting, it could be really capital intensive. So that's interesting about the wholesale model, the way you're talking about it. Everyone structures it different. When you're using a 3PL, are you using that 3PL just to hold the inventory and so you can ship it into Amazon from there? Or are you fulfilling orders from the 3PL as FBM orders?
That's a great question. We're really just using it for them to prep and pack and just get all that to get into Amazon. But there's the two other scenarios you mentioned one is, do they have inventory restrictions on that item? And you don't want to pass up 1,000 units and you can only send in 250. Well, what are you going to do with those other 750? Our suppliers will not hold that for us most of the time. But
Right.
So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to need to have your 3PL hold that for you. Well, you need to make sure that your 3PL will do that for you, because not all places will, especially places out here like Cali and stuff, like where space is really limited. So you need, upon calling your 3PL when you're doing that, that needs to be one of the questions you ask them is, do you hold inventory? And if so, for how long? How much space do you have? And then next you ask, do we do FBM? We do not do any FBM, but we are in the process of, I actually have a meeting here in about an hour of starting to do Walmart orders. And so that's basically like, instead of fulfilled by Amazon or fulfilled by merchant, it's just fulfilled by Walmart, and you have to individually ship out those. So we're in the process of doing that, but that's about it.
Do you get terms from your supplier, like 30-day terms, 60-day terms, or is it pay up front on all the orders? How's that work?
We really just pay up front. If they accept card, and sometimes we'll do that depending on, but we don't have any terms. The reason why I don't have any terms is because they were still wanting to do credit checks. And if you know anything about, and I did confirm with a couple of our suppliers. So I encourage people to do the same. Those were showing up as hard inquiries. And I would have rather just used my inquiry towards like a better, I like credit card churn and stuff. So I would just use it towards a better credit card, to be honest. But do your homework though. Like maybe that particular supplier will not show up as a hard inquiry, and it may make sense. So.
All right, so now let's take it from a different angle, because this is the second part, and I've got so many questions here too. This is really fascinating to me. When you're picking the products, so you got your list and you're going through it, what are the main factors? Obviously, it's got to be profitable. So if the numbers don't work, you probably pass. But then what if there's 27 sellers on the listing as opposed to 2? Is that a huge factor? Are you checking like price, like historical price swings on the product? Search volume, all that kind of stuff. What are the main factors that make a product a winner to select?
Yeah, so I mean, it really comes down to how many sales are you going to capture, right? So there could be 27 sellers on that, and if the item's moving 27,000 units a month, that means that we're going to get 1,000 units sales. You know what I mean? So it's like we look at everyone within the buy box, so really FBA pricing, and everyone that's close to that, and we calculate that out. So let's say there's 2 people selling this item at $29.99. and this item's moving 3,000 units a month, then we are going to be the third seller. So 3,000 divided by 3, assuming the buy box rotation is even, that comes out to be 1,000 sales a month. Now, the lowest we like to keep it at is around, I don't know, we've even picked up some items that are doing 50 sales a month. Like where we're capturing 50 sales. Like, right. I want to at least capture 50 sales. And you can see now there's tools too. Keepa has this out, and a lot of these tools do as well, where you can see the buy box rotation to make sure that that buy box is being somewhat evenly rotated on items before making that purchase.
I know that's a black hole, like the buy box rotation. What metrics do you see as like the most important for that rotation to get that buy box?
I mean, it's really vague. It's more like I don't expect this to be exact, but I want to see. Well, I want to see a plural of sellers on there. Like, I don't want to see 10 people at the buy box and then there's only 2 seller names in the buy box rotation. Like, that to me would be a red flag. Like, I don't have to see the exact timestamps. I think that's a bit overkill, but that's kind of how I handle that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So when you do that analysis, let's say you do that breakdown and you're like, we're estimating, there are 3,000 sales a month. There's 3 other sellers. We've estimated we're probably going to do 1,000 sales. Does that typically turn out to be the case? I mean, is that analysis? Is it a pretty good rough ballpark? That's what happens.
It's pretty good. I mean, you also have to take into account too a couple of other things, right? So it's like, well, what was price fluctuation like, right? I think you mentioned that, where it's like, well, what's the price fluctuation? So, for example, we just on those lights, one of the things we bought was where it's like, I know, like sometimes when stuff goes out of stock, the higher price points will get bumped. So we have our repricer set. I'll give you an example where this product, we want to sell it at least 35. Well, right now it's at 31. So we're just going to set our repricer. So even though we might have captured a couple hundred sales a month, the way we're doing it now, it might only be 100, but we factored that in. And then another thing you can do is, oh God, I forgot what I was going to say. My mind.
There's so many things going on.
There's a lot going on.
No, you're asking good questions for sure.
How do you handle bundles? I think that would be pretty cool because I've seen like 3 packs of an item show up, and I'm sure your prep center does it. But do you create your own bundle? Like, do you see opportunity where maybe I can bundle these together and be on my own listing? How do you do that?
Okay, so I personally do not create my own bundles in terms of new listings on Amazon. I don't do it. I don't advocate for it. I'm like, if you guys want to just make your own listings, like go start a private label business, because that's not what I teach. So I'm like, but if there's a listing that is bundled, where we're going to buy something for 1 pack and it's already listed and selling well on Amazon, let's say as a 4-pack, then yeah, we'll have our prep center do that. And we've had prep centers do that for us, where it's like, all right, these need to be as a 4-pack. We had this massive supplement order. I'm never doing it again, but it was like 50,000 units and it was a nightmare. But they were bundling. It turns out the 50,000 units ended up being about 15,000 to 20,000 sellable items. And that was because of the bundle factor. And those bundles were already on Amazon, and the prep center did it all for us. But yeah, it's definitely make sure your prep center does that if that is something you want to get into.
How do you handle all? I know FBA handles some of these returns, but how do you handle all the returns? Like there's got to be some items that sneak through, or people claim as damage that come back to you, or do they come back to the supplier? What's that look like?
So what you want to do, and this is like, we were doing this at our warehouse, but once again, we moved out of the warehouse, and that was the biggest concern is, well, now that we don't have a central location to receive removal orders and or returns, what do we do? Well, it's really, really hard to find a prep center that actually will do that for you. So that's something, another question. And I just recommend outsourcing this anyway, because it can get very hectic, is make sure your removal orders / returns can get that your prep center can do that for you. And there has to be a grading system, right? Like, is this new? Like, can we send this back in? Because Amazon isn't perfect. Is the packaging, we have a 5-tier system on how we rate our items. And now we get quoted at, I think we're at about $2 a unit right now on a removal. So that's about, and then our prep center gives us the quote. They'll let us know what we want to do. Do we want to send it back in as used? Very good. Do we want to sell it on eBay? Because we do sell on eBay as well for that kind of like that safety net. And yeah, so hopefully that makes sense, right?
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah,
there's so many moving parts, man. Like, I haven't even gotten into the repricer was another thing I was going to say when it comes to sales velocity, like, and having a great repricer. We pay $800 a month for our repricer.
Wow.
And it is but it is top notch. Like it is top grade. Like we can sell through items a little bit quicker, I feel like, and more efficiently, and increase that buy box capturing as well. So
What's
yeah,
the bottleneck here? Like what's the thing like selling wholesale? It's like this sucks. Like what's that?
man, I think it's just before getting all the processes ironed out. I think it's just a lot doing it yourself. And I would say mainly reaching out to suppliers, um, logistics, like running lists, and then getting through the list quick enough, and then also just when you get all these orders, like we have so many orders now, our biggest bottleneck, and this isn't going to be the same as someone who's just starting, is just logistics. We're ironing this out, but like all these shipments that are going in, what's the status on these shipments? Customs compliance, like all of these back end kind of like logistics from once the order's placed to the time it gets into Amazon. That area right now for us is our biggest bottleneck, and we have a software that we're working with right now that I think is really going to help us out.
So by the time you get a supplier list, how long does it take before those items arrive at Amazon?
Oh, okay, arrive actually in Amazon. Well,
At Amazon.
at Amazon, well, it depends on where you're buying it from. I would say if we're buying it here in the States and they have it on hand right now, not during Q4, I bet we could do it in a week, like a week, maybe 7 to 10
It's
days.
not bad.
But if it's coming, yeah, not bad. It's really quick. Now, if it's coming from out of the States and then they don't have it on hand, it can get a little bit trickier there for sure.
What's your breakdown on that? Are most of your suppliers domestic, or are most of them international?
Most of them are domestic here in the States.
And do you do? Well, I know we're firing questions. Do you
No, it's all good.
do you do U.S. marketplaces, or are you doing like UK, or like what's the breakdown there on those marketplaces?
We just started Europe not too long ago, and we are working with our repricer right now. Like it's not, the sales estimations are not going the way we had planned, and so we're just trying to learn. We just have these. We have several grand of items, and we're just trying to really analyze that and treat this as an experiment to where we can really blow it up. So right now, most of our sales volume, primarily all of it's coming from North America.
You mentioned you had a partner in the business. Is that right?
Yep.
Do you think this would be something that you wouldn't be able to do individually by yourself, that you need a partner to do something because they kind of yin and yang? Or could somebody do this by themselves and scale it?
I know people who do this by themselves. I know people, but I think me and my business partner, we met. We rode the same bus in high school, and then we
Nice.
went our separate ways, and then we got reconvened with like a entrepreneurship Facebook group. And I think we just work so well together. I mean, I think we're like Kobe and Shaq. Like we complement each other so well that I don't know anyone personally that's on our trajectory. Like I know other sellers that are doing more volume than us, but I don't know anyone who's excelling faster than we are. And I think it's because we just complement each other really well. And yeah, I mean, I know for a fact it wouldn't be as fun if we weren't doing it together. And I don't think we would be where we are, hands down.
So you had to teach him like the game, like this is Amazon FBA, or who introduced you to what? Like
yeah. So I've been selling on. I was at that point doing OA. It was
Gotcha.
right around the time where I was just like over OA. And Drew, I had him go through. I had a tactical arbitrage course at the time,
Nice.
and I had him go through. And Drew's sharp, like he's a sharp ass dude. And so like we got like it was like 30 days in. He's like, man, he's like, let's just do wholesale. And I just got back from the ASD at that time, so it was. I think that was my first trip to the ASD. I'm pretty sure. And yeah, and then we just kind of joined forces, and yeah, it's pretty much how it happened. So
let's hit on that ASD, because I know what that is. I think Dustin knows what that is. But what is ASD?
what does it stand for? It's a trade show, and it's a trade show in Vegas, and it's basically like where a lot of vendors, private label, wholesale, where you can like network with some of these suppliers at hand, and like face to face.
What's your strategy there? Because that's different than an email and a phone call. Like you're right
So
there. in front of somebody.
my strategy is to not go. That's
There you
my
go.
strategy. Is to just not go at all because
It's
it's
just not
terrible.
worth it anymore. Or
No, not that. I just think you can work smarter and not harder. I think there
Gotcha.
are ways to, like, yeah, if you were to show up, maybe you get one more supplier, like put yourself at the top of the bunch. But like, I think for the most part, you can just go to the trade show vendor list and reach out via email ahead of time. And you could even set it up to where it's like, hey, like I might go if, like if you really want me to go and you got great items, maybe it's worth my time. But like, hey, what's your product list like, and kind of go from there.
more, it can be like if you have supplier relations, you can go meet them up in Vegas, say what's going on, maybe get some deals or something.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it.
This is really making me want to dive in a little bit more to wholesale. I mean, there's obviously a lot to it, but you're making it sound obviously way easier than it is. But what do you see in the future of this? Do you see this being a valid business model for a long time to come?
I think so, and I think it will. I mean, I think it's never good to put all your eggs into one basket, right? I mean, I think this goes for anything, and to be like, they didn't think the Titanic would sink, yet it sunk. So I'm not going to be like, this is a foolproof business model. However, I think it is one of the most viable ones on Amazon because it's like everybody's always going to want a Nintendo Switch. Everybody always is going to want some Sony, Microsoft, Apple earbuds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a good network and a good infrastructure and you have that at your disposal and you're currently building it out, always building it out, I think it is definitely going to last for years to come. No questions.
And you can just do rinse and repeat on Walmart, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can do it on Walmart, but from what I found on Walmart, it is leagues behind Amazon. They're just starting their fulfillment program, and it's just, I mean, and there's like, I literally have a meeting here in about 45 minutes with someone who like supposedly can estimate sales on Walmart, because that's the biggest thing. I'm like,
right,
what's the velocity of these listings? How has no one figured this out yet? So that's kind of like, it's just way different than Amazon from what I'm seeing at face value.
Has there ever been an item you purchased from a supplier and it just took off faster than you've ever thought? You're like, we did not see that coming.
Oh, we've had it happen both ways, man, where like you're like, all right, this 2 weeks worth of inventory lasted for 3 days. And then there are times where I'm like, there have been times where we purchased something and I'm like, this week's worth of inventory has now turned into like 2 months.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Yeah.
Well, I think it'd be like good product knowledge. Like you're able to test out so many different products.
Yes.
That you could be like, damn, I could make my own label for this because I already know the demand is there. Has that ever like intrigued? I know you talked about private label earlier, but like, has that ever intrigued you? Like, hey, we could do the exact same thing this brand is doing. Get our own brand and scale it using the same process we're doing here.
I mean, we mainly deal with like electronics, video games, supplements, and beauty products. So I don't know.
Three categories to stay out of.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And it's like I haven't really seen something where I'm like, man, I bet I could like make this controller way better than Nintendo or something. But maybe I've like missed it, dropped the ball on that somewhere. I don't know.
I can just see if I was going through those and I had a product and the listing was just not very good, but it was selling and there was like no other products that were doing a very good job, I would be like, oh my gosh, I've got a private label this sucker right now. I could take all the sales and make more money.
We had this one product last Christmas that had like 3.5 reviews. And it was the reason why the reviews were so bad was because the price was so high and no one else could get them. So customers were like, this is so expensive. Like, this is garbage. God. But anyway, it was still selling just like, it was ridiculous, man. I was like, just so much money on that one item. So yeah,
it's so fun. I mean, I could talk about this forever. I know.
I love talking Amazon. Yeah, no, I dig it. Yeah,
it's fascinating. Sure. And what's interesting is mean, Kris and I have been selling on Amazon since 2014, both of us. In
Oh,
the
you guys
letter
are
world.
OGs. All
Yeah.
right.
We've been doing it for a long time,
Yeah.
but just hardly any discussion or work or focus on the wholesale model. So all this stuff is like, I've got so many questions about how this all operates. Like, how many SKUs are you selling on average at any given time? Is it an enormous amount?
It's a couple hundred. I would say like a couple hundred. Like it might get anywhere from like 200 to 500. So I think right now we have just under. When I checked Inventory Lab, I think we have just under 200 right now. But yeah, it's like slowly growing. I mean, I remember when we had like 10 or 20. So yeah, it's like slowly getting. I know people have so many. It's just way more than that. So
This is cool.
This is cool. Well, so before we wrap it up, I know that you do a lot of mentoring, like you said, and coaching. For anybody who's listening to this right now who's interested in that, how do they start working with you or watch your videos or any of that nature?
Yeah. I mean, like I always tell people before like going the whole paid training route, like get out the free info you can. Like just check out as much free info as you can. I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Kris McCauley. Yeah, I mean, and then I do have a training program. I don't know, it's like 40, 50 hours, like step by step covering all the logistics of the wholesale business model. And we also do have a distribution company as well, where we do sell products. And we closed it down. So we have like 10 to 20 people, but hopefully by end of year, we can ramp that back up. I want to be having a full blown distribution business as well. So
talk about that in a little bit more detail. So if I'm looking to purchase products, I can just buy them directly from you to wholesale.
Yeah. So basically we had it designed for people who were in our training program. And then we're like, yeah, so, one of the biggest bottlenecks in the beginning is finding profitable products from suppliers. And this is just kind of a way to bypass that, like to speed that up. It's not meant to last forever, but it's kind of like a crutch or training wheels to get you into it, where it's like, we break it all down. It's like, here are a list of products every week that have, meet these criteria, 20% ROI, kind of like, I don't know if you guys have like seen the OA list that people do, but this is just, we're selling the products via distribution wholesale business model.
It sounds like a good way to like get you familiar with the process, learn how to do this before you really open up the floodgates and like they learn it on their own. Like they can learn this at a smaller scale, learn it real quick, and then they could go out and get all the suppliers they need.
Yeah, because your other suppliers aren't going to like check mismatches for you or like, hey, here's the ROI on this. Like that just doesn't happen. So it's like definitely training wheels for sure.
Man, we've got you back on sometime in the future.
Anytime,
there's
for sure.
So much to talk about, and I love talking about this model.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
you guys should start up. All you gotta do is get a VA to send out some emails for you and run lists and sign up the supplier sheets for you. Boom, there you go. Like you guys are.
I love it.
Get the Amazon business model. So
get the 3PL lined up.
Get the 3PL lined up. Ready, set, go. Watch out, guys.
Go.
So.
Oh yes, it's on now. I love it. This has been so much fun. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, no, appreciate
it.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It was great talking with
Absolutely.
you. For sure.
And for everybody listening, you can go check him out at KrisMcCauley.com. Go check out his YouTube. Like you said, he's got great videos. And then hit him up on if you really want to dive in. I think you should be following someone who's been doing it. So the course that you give will obviously pay for itself in value for anybody who's watching. So I encourage everybody to do that. If anybody who's listening, if you're running ads on Amazon, whether you're a wholesale seller, we didn't even talk about that much about running ads, if you do any of that or not. But if you are running ads and you're struggling with optimizing them, or you'd like to automate it, reach out to us at Solozo. You can go to solozo.com. You can book a demo up in the top right corner, and you'll get on a call with either Kris or myself, and we'll walk you through Solozo's platform and how we can automate the advertising for you. Kris, thanks so much for coming on. Everyone, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to whatever channel. If you're watching us on Facebook or LinkedIn or where else we at? YouTube, wherever you're
Right.
at, subscribe to it so you can see more content like this. And we talk to really cool people like Kris. Thanks again, Kris, and we'll talk to everybody next time. See ya.
Thanks for having me.